Hello, everyone. Today is March 25th, 2021. This is the Kubernetes Storage SIG meeting. Today, we will go over our planning sheet for 1.21. The first one is delegate FS group to CSI driver instead of kubelet. Is Herman here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so this feature did not make into 121 because we did not get the CSI driver, CSS spec change, and we are trying to push it for next release. And yeah, I have pinged people and we'll discuss it in the CSI community sync when we get a chance.
Thanks. The next one is the CSI online, offline resizing.
Yeah, we made some fixes and we are trying to get some, we'll try to get some more changes in 1.22, especially the copying the allow volume expansion field that requires a cap, and then the recovery from resize failures. Yeah, so this is like there's a cap already merged for recovery from resize failure, but I have to update it for the new design.
Okay, so this is actually the next one, right? I think we have, yeah, okay, so this is this one, recovering from resize failure. Okay.
Yeah.
So we need a cap. Need to update the cap.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks. Next one is Secure Linux recursive permission handling. Yang, do you have an update on this? Is Yang there? No? Okay. So maybe no update then. Next one, CSI in-tree read-only handling. Is Chang here? Does anyone know about this? Next one, issues related to assuming volumes are mount point.
Last time we mentioned was a PR reverted, and so I checked that again because the risk condition between like pod deletion and volume management still exist. That PR will not be able to merge again until we resolve that risk condition, which is right now we don't have a full complete solution yet.
Okay. Okay, thank you. The next one is the storage capacity tracking for pod scheduling. Do we have Patrick here? So I think this one is almost ready. I think, does anyone know more about this?
Yeah, there's there's a number of reviews going on in external provisioner, but I think they're mostly in good shape, so they should be complete within the next week.
Okay, thanks. The next one is also Patrick's PVC inline ephemeral volumes. Michelle, Yang, do you know this one? Is there?
I think this one's done.
Done?
I think the docs PR merged, and there aren't any more PRs pending, so we can mark this one as done. I think on the
he brought up some. Okay.
B. Oh, he brought up something.
I thought there was a test. I thought Chen is supposed to review that one yesterday. I'm not sure if that one is, but I forgot if that one is for this.
The test that Cheng was reviewing was related to capacity.
Oh, okay. So that's okay. Then this one we'll just mark it as done then. Okay. Is that one merged?
Which one? The test?
Yeah, I thought there was one test. just
Yeah,
submitted
the test
yesterday.
merged.
Oh, okay, cool.
I think so.
Right.
Jing, did you have something?
Oh, no, I was just talking. I saw the test PR was reviewed for storage capacity.
Okay, so the test merged. Okay, thanks. Okay, next one is spreading or field domain. I think this one is still pending on the next one, volume group. I actually haven't got a chance to update. And actually I need to schedule a review meeting for this. So I need to do that soon. Next one, CS auto tree move as driver, feed and finish.
This has some nominal progress made. I opened a PR to include the staging repository. So once that gets merged, I'll ping the people necessary and keep moving it on. So minor progress.
Thank you. Next we'll move out NFS provisioner and then FS client provisioner. Okay, so client one is done. What about NFS provisioner? Do you have Karen here? Or is still, Michelle, do you know, is this a work in progress or?
I haven't seen anything since last time.
Okay, just say no update then. And then the next one is PVC volume snapshot namespace transfer. Question?
No updates on this one. We still need to figure out a good way to move the secrets.
Okay, thank you. Next, voting house. So there is a doc PR that is being reviewed. So I need to update that, trying to get that merged. And then Ryan is working on removing the agent logic from the external house monitor repo. And next one is a voting populator. Ben?
As I think I mentioned last time, this did not make beta for 121, so we're aiming for beta 122. In the 121 timeframe, we're going to try to do alpha releases of both the data source validator controller and the volume populator library. That's what I'm working on now.
Okay. Is the repos created yet, or still waiting for that to be?
I just approved them, so hopefully soon.
Oh, okay.
Oh, thank you, Saad. I was going to hunt you down.
Thank you. The next one is Cozy. Do you have anyone from Cozy side? Or Ben, you want to talk about this one?
Update on Cozy.
Yeah.
Let me think. That we continue to be tinkering with the API design and the KEB. I guess the plan is to address all of the existing concerns that prevented it from getting approved for 121 and to try to go alpha in 122. The biggest change that is going on right now is an alteration to the way they handle the brownfield case or the way that they handle sharing of buckets across namespaces, because with object storage, sharing is expected to be much more common than it is with like block storage or file storage. So they really want to make sure they get that use case right. And the current design is moving from having an object per namespace to having one object that all the namespaces can point to. But if you're interested in that, please come to the meetings. We're getting a ton of work done.
Yeah, there's actually a meeting after this.
Yeah, the regular weekly meeting for Cozy is subsequent to this one every week.
If you're interested, you can join that meeting right after this meeting is complete. Thanks, Ben. Next one is change block tracking. So we had a meeting to talk about the CPT use case, just to talk about how to describe the workflow, because there are a couple pending things, like the potential security issue, how to address that, and also we're still waiting for feedback from AWS EBS side on the API design stuff. So that's the status. Next one is a new rewrite on the access mode. Is Chris here? Michelle, do you know the status of this?
He has a provisional cap out. So yeah, I think we can take a look at it, and at least if it's provisional, we can merge it. I think Chris plans on working on the cap in multiple pieces. So we're gonna keep it provisional until everything is there.
Okay, is there a plan to do an alpha in 1.22 or right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, alpha and 122.
Thanks. Next one is update topology labels from beta to GA. Do you have Lana or Jiawei here?
Yeah, Lila, do you want to talk about this?
Yeah, I think the Azure one, I made some updates to it, but it's not mergeable right now. But I'm working on getting it to pass the Azure file test that it's failing. Yeah. Hopefully done soon.
Okay, thank you. Next one is the system migration core, Jiawei.
Yeah, so for this one, I think most of the work is done for 1.21. There's still one small bug fix that are still in discussion with Yang. We're still trying to figure out what's the best way to fix that. Other than that, I think in 1.21 we're all good. Except for the update topology. But I think Leila will take care of that. So yeah, it should be good.
Okay, thanks. Next one is vSphere. So I think so support for 6MU3 is planned to be in the next 2.3 release. Still right now, we're working on it. And then I think still need to follow up on the CSI Windows support. Next one is the CSI migration Azure file. Jiawei.
Yeah, I think it has been moved to beta, but I do know there is another issue related to secret that has been raised. Michelle, do you know that?
Somehow I thought this one didn't make it. I
No, it made it.
Not?
It made it?
No,
Okay.
it's there.
Oh, okay. Then maybe I was looking at the wrong information.
Yeah, there is one. Yeah, there is one regression that was identified, and so there's a revert in progress. But I think from the migration standpoint, I mean, I think migration will still be beta, but there's going to be another issue that will have to be fixed after we revert the other change.
Okay, thanks. So can this one be marked down or still, or well, maybe
I think there's still a docs.
Okay.
Docs is
Okay.
still pending, I think.
The doc is, I think, is merged. No, I
Oh,
saw the doc is being approved, so
okay.
it should be fine. Yeah.
Okay, so this one's down then? Or
Yeah, I think we can mark it as
maybe,
done.
but we didn't mark any of the migrations, so we will just leave it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sure.
Okay, CS migration, GCE. Do we have an update?
Yeah, I mean, this is the same update as last time. It is, we are not turning on by default upstream in 121, but this is still going out in GKE 121 in a month-ish.
Okay. Thanks. Next one is OpenStack Xing CS migration. I thought this one is, I believe this one is the only one that is on by default. Is that right? Oh,
Yes,
yeah, on by default. Okay.
it's on by default.
Right. Thanks. System migration, Ceph represent the RBD. Do we, okay, looks like there's no update.
Yeah, do you know if Humble is still working on this?
I'm not sure. I thought he's back, but haven't seen him still. I'm not sure what's the stuff.
Okay.
We haven't seen him join this meeting. I thought he's back, but maybe he's still busy with other things. So
I think I tried to pin him on the issue about this, but I didn't get any reply. So
do you try to ping him on Slack?
I will try. I'll try next. Yeah.
Yeah, we got an email from him when he was back, but then after that, he seems to be still busy with other things. I haven't seen him in these meetings, so I'm not sure. Thank you. The next one is non-graceful node shutdown, so I will still need to update the cap. Next one is the enable username space in kubelet. So UIDs get shifted. And this, okay, I don't know. Looks like Hamad is on this, but we don't really have any update yet. Do we know anything, Hamad, about this one?
No, I haven't had time to track this actually.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Next one is immutable secrets config maps. That one is done. And so next one is PVC created by stay for sad will not be auto removed. Matt?
Yes, so I did not manage to make the code freeze. Oh, I guess I gave that update last week. Yeah, so this is still in progress. The API is done. Implementation is still in process.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, so we'll try next release. Hopefully get it merged early. Okay. Thanks.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
Next one is the volume expansion for stay for sad. This is a KK or Matt are you also keeping track of this one? Or Hamant?
This requires, I think, new owner. I haven't heard back from KK. If it's yeah, so it's been a couple of releases, I think, and there's a lot of community interest in it. So if anybody's, and there's already like 70% done. KEP is there, but we need to update it, and it's a very interesting feature if anybody wants to work on it.
Yeah, so I'd actually be, so this has actually recently come up a bit on Slack and stuff. I mean, I think there may be a slightly more general way to do it, just in terms of updates. Anyway, if anyone else is interested in talking about this, I'd be interested as well. I don't know if I can commit to taking this, as I've already, am hardly managing to deal with the auto delete one, but if there's anyone else who's interested, I'd like to discuss.
Okay, so I'll put your name there, and also I'll see if we have someone from outside who are interested in working on this.
Sure, makes sense.
Thanks. Okay, next one is execution for container notifier. So Shanchen has updated the cap, so we need to get API reviewers to review it again. We also reviewed the new proposal in yesterday's data protection working group meeting, get some feedback. Next one is Kubernetes utilizes mount splitting a new repo. Is Srini here? Okay. Next one, SIG scheduling prioritization on volume capacity. So this one is Michelle. This one is done, right? So do we have any?
Yeah, it merged. I think it's done.
Okay.
The docs update also merged as well. So we can mark
okay.
this one as done.
Okay, thanks. Next one is user ID ownership in config maps and secrets. Jiawei, do we have any update on this?
Yeah, so I don't think I don't get enough cycle this this release, but I have another like outside contributor whose name is Ambashak, and he said he's also like very interested in this, and he will take this up. Yeah, so I'll work with him to figure out what's the next plan.
Great, thank you. Okay, I think that's all we have on the spreadsheet. Okay, so yeah.
Oh, I realized I never put CSI proxy in here.
Oh.
So I'll just give a quick update on CSI proxy.
Oh, okay.
So right now it's beta. So we are working on to move it to GA. There is Mauricio from our team
GA,
already.
GA for this release or next release?
This release, kind of like this release. It's independent of Kubernetes release,
right, okay.
but kind of at the end of this month, we hope to. So there is already PR to move the major API groups like disk, volume, file, system, SMB into B1. And there is one small issue related to checking volume, checking disk formatted or not. After that resolved, and PR can be merged. I think we pretty much ready for GA.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Sure.
So we don't have a cap for this, do we? Do we actually have a corresponding issue that we can add here? Or
yes, I think I can add it.
Okay.
There's a project for CSI proxy. I can add that project here.
Okay. Thanks.
Sure.
Okay, going back to this. So we have passed the test freeze deadline. I think that was yesterday. The next deadline is next Wednesday, March 31st. Docs must be merged. So I think that's the next, yeah, that's the next deadline. And we have an issue here. Do we have a Jim here?
Yes, I am here.
Oh, okay. So we can talk about this one, relaxing mount propagation conformance.
Yes. So I have done a little bit of work on this since I logged the request to talk in this meeting. It turns out this is not a conformance test as I originally thought, but there is still an E2E test that does check that when you've got bidirectional mount propagation, the amount done by a container with bidirectional propagation turned on does propagate all the way up to the host OS. This is something that we would like to get relaxed. And the main driving factor behind this is that on Linux systems with systemd, there is a lot of systemd overhead involved in parsing the mount table as changes occur. And basically, a workaround we found for this that seems to address the underlying systemd issue, as well as not causing any issues with any containers that we've ever tried it with, is to basically take the container runtime and also kubelets and move them down into a separate mount namespace. And as long as that's set up cleverly with mount propagation, so it still receives host OS mounts into that namespace, every other usage of container bidirectional mount propagation seems to work great with CSI, with other mechanisms where like the container runtime hooks might need access to a mount point that was created by a container. There is a link. I can't remember if it's in this document. I can just drop it in the chat as well. It's got sort of a graphical representation of sort of how the mount namespaces are laid out now versus how they would be laid out in a potential implementation if we relax this test. But basically, the thing that I'm trying to at least start with is just a discussion around, do we know of any use cases where something running in the host OS that's not a container and not sort of beneath the call tree of the container runtime or kubelet itself, is there anything up there that really needs access to these mount points that are created by containers? So I have this issue that you've got open here where I hope we can have some more discussion about it. I've also posted to the Kubernetes development list, as well as SIG node and SIG storage mailing lists, looking just for if there's any information about known use cases where there's something at the host OS that really needs access to these mount points. So far, other than the idea that there might be sort of legacy monitoring tools that might want access to it, that we haven't found anything that sort of requires this access. And so it's so far looking like, for most container native applications, there isn't any need for the host OS to have access to any of those mount points, either the ones created by kubelet, the ones created by the container runtime, the ones created by containers with bidirectional mount propagation setup. And so just hoping to sort of keep the discussion going and see if we can uncover any use cases we haven't thought of. The driving force behind this is OpenShift has some applications where we have sort of a resource constrained environment. We're trying to sort of get the CPU utilization down as much as possible. And so, this is actually going quite a long ways to sort of reducing the systemd overhead. And among some other improvements, we kind of want to squeeze as much CPU to make it available for workloads as we possibly can.
Can you get my slingshot?
I had a question on this. So at least from my experience, we sometimes, just for like debugging and triaging purposes, we might want to go in and view all the mounts that are on the host. Is that still possible with some alternative command or something like that?
Absolutely. It's actually very easy. Effectively, all you need to do is in your shell, if you know where the namespace itself is pinned in the file system, you can use the nsenter command, and that will basically drop you into that mount namespace. And then using the mount command or find mount, you get the full listing of everything that's in there. Likewise, if there is some sort of legacy tool that needs access, it's actually very easy to, again, you can use nsenter to wrap that command so it spawns inside of that mount namespace, and then it will still have access to all of those, container-specific mount namespaces. So there are workarounds for both administrator access and legacy tools.
Okay. And it's also possible to just list all the available mount namespaces.
That's a good question. Yes. If you run find mount in the host OS namespace, yeah, you would get, yeah, even running mount. It sort of depends on how the namespace is created and what's done with it. In the proof of concept that I've done for OpenShift, I explicitly bind the mount namespace to a file. And so that does show up in the listing of mount. It is possible to have a mount namespace that's just owned by a process ID, and that doesn't really show up because it's not bind mounted in the mount file system. So if it were implemented in another way, where it's sort of attached to a PID instead of a file on disk, it would be more difficult to know how to do that.
But you can enumerate all of the PIDs and find all of their namespaces and enumerate all their mounts.
That's
if you
true.
wanted to.
Absolutely. And I guess because by its very nature, we would know that both kubelet and the container runtime would necessarily be inside of that mount space. You can always look at what is the PID of kubelet, find out what mount namespace it's in, enter that one, and there you are. In fact, actually, sorry, go ahead.
I had a question. I assume that we already looked at changes to systemd to not go crazy when there's a lot of mounts to alleviate the CPU problem, because that would be the other way to attack the underlying issue.
Absolutely. So basically, this actually sort of originated from a Red Hat Bugzilla, and there are some changes in systemd that reduce this load. However, the estimate of how much it reduces the overhead is 30 to 50%, which is good, a step in the right direction. However, it doesn't help us in OpenShift, where we're sort of working on an older version of a system that doesn't necessarily have the fixes yet. It also doesn't get us all the way down to 0. And the change that would be required to get that overhead much lower would actually be a kernel change to actually get more granular updates on the mount point changes. So there are the upstream systemd that OpenShift doesn't have access to is better than the older version of systemd that OpenShift currently has, but there is still some significant overhead there that's just based on the fact that it doesn't get a succinct list of exactly what changed in the mount namespace as mounts go in and out.
So this is the path of least resistance, is doing it this way.
Exactly. Exactly. It's also much easier to sort of backport it to older versions for, customers that might be stuck on an old version for some reason. They aren't able to upgrade and get a newer systemd.
What actual changes are needed to enable this on the Kubernetes side?
Well, the real change is that there's a single E2E test that currently checks this mount propagation logic, and it's designed such that it's enforcing the fact that if you do a mount inside of a bidirectional container, it's visible at the host OS. I do have, actually just scrolled up to the top of the screen there. I have a link to a, sorry, I think it's my first comment after this. I have a link that is to a branch in Kubernetes, basically just fixes the E2E test so that if it notices that kubelet is in a different mount namespace, it does the checking inside of that mount namespace instead of checking at the top level.
Where is it?
There we go.
This
Lack
one.
commented 9 days ago. That first link there. Yeah, that's right. So if you dive in there, basically what this does is it has a check to see whether or not we're in a namespace, and then if so, it does the test differently. It also changes some of the language around the mount propagation flags themselves, because it does change the meaning a little bit compared to how it's documented.
Yeah, I think this sounds like a reasonable change overall, and probably good for older systems that are suffering from these performance issues.
I guess my only concern is, since we are changing the behavior of a GA feature, do we need to go through the standard deprecation policy for this, just in case someone was actually depending on it?
Are we actually deprecating this already? I thought he was just suggesting relaxing this in test case itself.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing about this feature, is it's really just sort of an implied feature that it doesn't require an actual change to Kubernetes itself. It's relaxing the test. It's changing some documentation about what some flags mean. So it's a little bit more nebulous than something that can be deprecated. We're sort of deprecating an expectation of what the environment is where Kubernetes is running.
Is it
I see.
possible
So to basically enable this behavior, you need to make a change to the way that the mount namespaces are set up for
Exactly.
Kubernetes.
And to some degree, it's kind of outside of the scope of Kubernetes, I think. I mean, I was looking through the Kubernetes documentation. I mean, sort of coming at this from OpenShift, there's a whole suite of like install tools and stuff that are part of OpenShift. But looking at the Kubernetes, how do I install Kubernetes page? It basically says, it's up to you to tell your init system to start kubelet at boot. And that's kind of where the change would have to be made, is when you start up your container runtime and your kubelet instance, you need to do the work to put those inside of a new namespace. I have a proof of concept that does this. I think it's very easy to adapt to any system that has systemd running, not just OpenShift specifically.
So in this case, what's the difference between the mount is still bi-directional, and how about host to container?
Yeah, so here, basically here's how it works. And let me drop this link into chat. It does, I think, a good job of sort of explaining graphically sort of how things look now and how things look under, an implementation of my proposed way of this, the way this could change. So I just threw that in chat there. So if we look at this first diagram, this is basically effectively how it looks today. You've got systemd, login shells, kubelet, the container runtime, everything's in the same namespace. When container A has mount propagations to bidirectional and it mounts run/A, everybody in the upper level sees it. And then container B that has host to container propagation set up, it also sees it because it gets pulled down with all the other things in the host. Now, if you scroll down a little bit, there's another diagram that will show sort of what it would look like after. And so basically you can see here that anything that is mounted by systemd or login shells, as long as the namespace, this new secondary namespace is set up properly with appropriate, it has to be slave/shared propagation. But effectively anything from the OS still goes down into kubelet in the container runtime. And from there, they propagate down into containers that have host to container set up properly. And then as you can see here, when container A mounts in its bidirectional space run/A, that propagates up to kubelet and container runtime. It also propagates down to container B, but it does not propagate up to where systemd and login shells can see it by default, unless something in that namespace explicitly enters that lower level namespace.
So if container A use mount propagation host to container instead of bi-directional, what's the difference like when you use these two?
So you can see an example of that is container B that uses host to container. So both today and under this proposal, if a container that uses host to container mounts its own mount namespace inside of that area, it sees run/B, but the parent namespace does not see run/B. However, it does see all of the mounts that are below that that volume as though they were locally available. So if container A was host to container and not bidirectional, container A would see run/A. The parent runtime, the container runtime namespace would not see run/A, and container B would not see run/A. But because container A is bidirectional, that allows that mount of run/A to propagate up to container runtime and also down to container B because it has host to container.
Does this mean that pods that are run with escalated privileges. So like just privileged pods would end up in the same namespace as kubelet and containerd, but not the system namespace.
That's a good question. I think that by default that is true. And so if a privileged pod would want access to that top level namespace, it would need to like ns enter into /proc/1 namespace.
Right. I mean, that's not so much a storage concern as just a pod security concern, you know. But by trying to run everything in something other than the system namespace, it means every privileged pod will also be off in that other namespace that you created. Which I don't think it's going to mess up any CSI plugins, because nearly all CSI plugins are privileged. But I wonder if there are other non-CSI use cases where this could get us in trouble.
Yeah, that's a good question and a good point. I'm going to make a note to see if I can figure out where to ask that question to get more details, and bring that up as a potential, like a privileged pod that would expect to be in that sort of highest level namespace would no longer be in that highest level namespace.
I think there's a SIG security, right? They would probably be the experts on such things.
That's a good idea. And in fact, I mean, I guess one thing that we could say about my proposal is that if you have the secondary namespace, it is actually slightly more secure in that a privileged pod isn't in that highest level namespace where you could like unmount /proc, for example. You know, you would not have access at that host level to the mounts, to the mount points. You would only be sort of contained inside of the kubelet container runtime area unless you explicitly use ns enter to pop back up into the parent namespace.
Yeah, I think from the storage side of things, this doesn't look concerning to me. I think going back to the concern that Michelle raised about deprecation, it seems like this is a requirement on the underlying system that Kubernetes has, and we're relaxing that. And so kind of the burden of validation rests on that distributor rather than on Kubernetes. So I don't know if we actually need to go through any alpha, beta, GA for this. Just do it.
Yeah, that's a good way to think about it, especially because this is really like it, once the test is relaxed, whether or not a distributor wants to do it is really an opt-in. Like it allows them to do it should they want to do so and take on the burden of, you know, the qualification and documentation changes and such, but it doesn't require anyone to do so.
So the proposal is to kind of have option when you test, right? You can choose test, either relax or use the existing logic.
That's right. And basically the way that I have sort of done up my proof of concept with the change to the ETE test is the test automatically detects. And so you can see that right at the before all these changes, there's basically a single if, actually right there, line 198. It basically checks what mount namespace is kubelet in. Is that the same as the mount namespace that systemd is in? And based on that, it either executes the exact same logic as the previous test, or the new logic that sort of understands that when you've got your container mounts segregated from your host mounts, you know, the test is slightly different. It still ensures that, you know, container mount propagation goes up from a bidirectional container to the container runtime level and back down to anything that has host to container, since that's critical for things like CSI. But it doesn't check, it actually explicitly checks that in that if you have this segregated mount namespace, the host OS, that top level namespace, does not see those bidirectional mounts. So it just sort of flips that one piece of this test on its head.
And just to double check, you're only talking about the mount namespace, not the network namespace or any other namespaces, right?
That is correct. Yeah, mount namespace only.
Yeah, so things like CNI plugins and other things won't care.
Yep, that's exactly right. So if there aren't any other questions today, I mean, feel free to, if you think of something after the fact, come back to either the mailing list threads or the issue that I've logged there for more discussion. And I made a note to follow up with SIG security, since I think that was a really good suggestion. Yeah, thanks so much for your time and talking to me about this.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other issues we want to discuss in this meeting? If not, that is for today. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Take care.